Hey there, friendos, and welcome to part 3 of the Motion Graphics Creation mini-series. Just to do a quick recap, in the first episode we pretty much set up our project. We added these little markers to help us determine where the animation beats are going to go on this timeline. And we also made our blueprint background, yes, from scratch. In the second part, we created all the different graphics that you see here. Now, if you remember, all the LEDs, they're pretty much one layer, one shape layer. You know, we did the repeater and all the stuff like that, and that's how we got this. If you missed it, go back and watch that. Oh, and before we begin with this part, if you want to follow along, you can actually download the project files. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can find that. Alright, so in this part, we're going to be doing the animating. So first thing I'm going to do is actually something I forgot to do in the last episode, is I'm going to take the lead wires and I'm going to put them underneath the battery pack. Alright, so I'm going to get rid of everything here except for our LEDs. I'm also going to get rid of the paper texture and screw it, why not the blueprint? Alright, so now we just have our LEDs. So for some of the animations, we're actually going to be using a transition effect. Alright, so let's go up to Effects and Presets and let's type in CC Page Turn. Alright, it's right there under Distort, CC Page Turn. So let's take that and put that on top of our LEDs. Now you can see the little corner right here is kind of folded up. So I'm going to run through some of these settings real quick, just to let you know what they are and that they exist. First off, we have controls. This controls where the fold comes from. So bottom right corner, yep, checks out. Bottom left corner, yep. Top left corner, top right, not doing anything. But here, if we move this little doohickey right here, you can see that it's working now. So what that is the fold position. And with these settings, all you have to do is determine where you want the fold to happen and then use this to create the fold. So after that, we have fold direction. This is grayed out when you're using any one of these because the last option, or the first option technically, is classic UI. Now if we set that to that, we can actually control the fold direction and the fold position. Alright, so now underneath that we have the fold radius, and this determines how wide or how tight that fold is. Light direction, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's the direction that the light is coming in. So then under that we have our render and our back page. So we can render out both the front and the back page, or just the back page. So that would be the other side of the image, or just the front. But we're just going to go front and back page. So underneath that, you can select what the back page is going to be. You can make it whatever you want. Right now, we're going to set that to just LEDs for now. And then underneath that, we have back opacity. And that's how visible the back is. Paper color? I don't know what that does, honestly. I don't know. Maybe if you set it to none. Yep, okay. So if we set the back page to none, we can select the color that we want. All right, so let's just do LEDs. Okay, what I want to do is I want this to come out from the right side and then fold out into the left side. I think I'm going to go with bottom left corner. Yeah, that'll be fine. Where's our doohickey? There it is. Found it. All right, so we're going to take our fold position and we're just going to bring that over to the right. All right, now can't really go past this. We can zoom out and do that. But we're just going to go and bring up the X axis on the fold position. That's the left and right, whereas the second number, the Y, is the up and down. All right, not important for right now. So let's go to about where we have the LEDs enter. I'm going to do it right before, maybe at 1 second. And I'm going to click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe. Now in here, I'm going to hit U on the keyboard to bring up that keyframe. So now we can see it. See it? It's right there. So now we're going to take our playhead and we're going to move that to, I'm going to say 3 seconds. All right, my thought process on this, because it's before we start bringing out the wires, because there's a lot going on this layer, I kind of want to bring it in and have it kind of sit there so the audience can get an orientation of what they're looking at a little bit better than if I just like, boom, here's the LEDs, boom, here's the red wires, boom, here's the other thing, you know? You don't want to assault your viewer with animation. Anyway, so let's bring this back down, the X position. All right, and let's click on this guy and hold down Shift and start bringing it over. Now we want to go all the way to here. Now, if you notice, The fold should be completed by now, but now we got this corner coming up. So let's take this and let's just move this down. Again, holding down Shift while I'm clicking and dragging. And I'm going to bring it down to this corner. That'll make sure that everything is unfolded by the end of the animation. That might be a little too slow. One thing I want to do is actually kind of ease the animation into the end of the fold. So we can take this last keyframe, I'm going to right click on it and go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease In. From there, I can click on the graph editor right here, and you can see we have pretty much a graphical representation of our motion. All right, so I'm going to right click. Right now it's set to Edit Value Graph. Unfortunately, with the way this works and the position, you can't edit the handles on this, so you have to do Speed Graph. So I'm going to take this little last keyframe here and take this handle, and I'm going to move it in just like this. That way it more eases into the end of the fold. All right, so let's go about halfway here. Let's go about halfway here. The fold radius, we're actually going to bring that up. I forgot to reset this whole thing before I started doing it. Oh well, we're going to just roll with it because this is already the second time I've recorded almost this whole thing. Thank you, computer. All right, so fold radius, we're going to set that to about 200. Nice and fat and wide. Light direction, we're going to make it so that the shadow is falling on the back side here. So just bring that around. Boom. There we go. Now we have shadow. Now, moving right along to the render, or to the back page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate our LED layer. That's Command D. And I'm going to get rid of the page turn on the top one. And what I'm going to do is open this up, open up the contents, and I'm going to select everything except for the strip and the repeater. And I'm going to delete that. And then what I'm going to do is poke its little eye out so it can't see anymore, so you can't see it anymore. All right, so let's go back to our original LEDs and let's go to the back page display. Now let's set that to LEDs 2. Now, with the revelation of, because I had never actually been paid attention to the paper color, what we could have done was just selected that and put this on none. But what fun would that be if you're not learning more about the different settings here and how to work them? Back page opacity, we're going to make sure that's set to 100. So that is our LED strips. All right, so now let's move on to our red wires. And this is where we're going to have a callback to a moment in the previous episode. Now, if you saw that and you remember, for the red wires, I used the pen tool and I started up here because, you know, if you think about it logically, the current is coming from the batteries into here and then moving across and then going from here to here. So I started off creating the wire from this point to this point. But then I made a point to switch it up and do the rest of them going from the bottom position to the top. And now we're about to see why. Now the payoff for that cliffhanger. So for the red wires, we're going to animate this by adding a trim paths. So if we go to red wires here, we have this little button that says add. Now we use that to create the repeater a whole bunch of times. But this time we're going to go to trim paths. Bomb. All right, so now let's open that up. And what we're going to be animating is the start here. Now you notice everything goes at the same time. Now we don't want this because we're going to play this back. So let's replay this whole audio. Let's go over the plan first. I'm going to basically daisy chain the strips together. I'll hook the positive of the first strip to the positive below it. From the opposite side of that second strip, I'll connect it to the one below. I keep going until I've connected all of them. Then I go through and do the same for the ground wires. Finally, I hook up the wires from the battery pack to the very first pads. It should be pretty simple. So, for the red wires, I mentioned that I'll be hooking basically going daisy chaining from here to here. And then I go on about how on the opposite side, I'll do the same, but down one step. And then I go through and do the rest. So we need to break all of that up into its own little section of animation. And we've done this with our animation flags. All right, so the reason why I'm bringing this up, because if you go down to trim paths and we play with the start, you see that they all animate at the same time. Now, one thing we can do is we can set this from simultaneously to individually. Now they animate individually. So we're going to go from the start being at 100 all the way down to 0. So let's pay attention to how this animates as I bring it down. You'll notice that the first one starts down here and ends here. And then the second one starts up here and ends down here. Now this is the one that I went from up here to down here. But it does the opposite. And that kind of makes sense with the way we have to animate this. Either way, we're going to have to be animating the start. Now, what I can do is go into shape 1 in here. Let's crack that open. Click on path 1. And I'm going to click on this vertex down here. Now I'm going to right click and go to mask and shape path. And I'm going to set first vertex. Now you can see we kind of, it's going the wrong way. All right, so we can take this handle and we could just move it over and switch that over. Boom, there we go. So now when we animate the start, everything goes as it should. All right, so let's start it at 100. And again, let's bring it to about where we start the red wire. So red wire start here. Then I'm gonna click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe, and let's hit U so we can just get rid of everything else but the keyframe. So from this point on to where we get into red wire position 2, that's gonna be explaining moving from here to here. So what we wanna do is actually start bringing this down, all right? We wanna get it as close to ending here, but not starting over on this end. So right now we had it 75. If we do 76, it's still visible there. If we do 77, it's not completed. So let's do 76.5. Actually, let's bring it up a little bit more. 0.6. Nope, we need to go down. That's right. 0.4. All right, so we're basically at the end of that line right there, but not crossing over into starting the new one. So we're good. So we have that keyframe. From there, we're gonna go to our flag where it says red wire end. So we're gonna bring that down until we are pretty much completed. We got a little tiny glimpse of it right here. So we wanna get rid of that. 0.5. There we go, close enough. So we wanna take this before the black wires marker. We're just gonna bring that down the rest of the way. Now you can see if we play this back, strips together, I'll hook the positive of the first strip to the positive below it. From the opposite side of that second strip, I'll connect it to the one below. I keep going until I've connected all of them. Then I go through and do the same for the ground wires. So we have this. What I want to do is select all of them, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. In the strips together, I'll hook the positive of the first strip to the positive below it. From the opposite side of that second strip, I'll connect it to the one below. I keep going until I've connected all of them. There we go. So that way it just eases all the animations, all the points. So in the graph editor, I can right click and go to edit value graph. I like using this more than the speed graph whenever I can. And in this particular situation, I can. All right, so I'm gonna take the first one and I'm gonna hold down shift while moving it. And I'm just gonna bring this in, bring this second one in. And what we're doing is we're creating more of a lag in between each set of animation. So it'll kind of go off slowly, speed up a little bit, and then slow down to the point where it stops. And then from the opposite side, it will start slowly gaining speed and then slow down into the final position. This way, it just adds more dynamicness. It adds more dynamics to your animation. Makes it look a little more professional. With, honestly, not that much more work. The strips together, I'll hook the positive of the first strip to the positive below it. From the opposite side of that second strip, I'll connect it to the one below. I keep going until I've connected all of them. Then I go, another thing that this kind of accomplishes, it gives your audience some time to be able to understand what's going on. When you're animating things, it should always be clear what you're trying to go for and what you're doing. And here we're kind of jumping all over the place as to where your attention should be. You start seeing, oh, look at this, it's moving and it completes. You're like, okay, well, where's my eye supposed to go from here? And then, oh, you got this little red bar creeping out on this other side. Oh, better take my attention over there. All right, where to next? All right. I don't know. I guess that's more animation principles and fundamentals that you should keep in mind when animating. All right, so that was the red wires. So now let's move on to our black wires. So let's turn them on. So we'll just go to where it says black wires on our marker. And we're going to open up the layer and we're going to add another trim paths. We're going to open that up and we're going to switch this to individually. Now, we're not going to need any kind of like fancy, like stop the animation here, and then we're just going to pretty much do the very simpleness of it. So let's create a keyframe, all right, at that point, and let's bring that up to 100%. Then hit U so we can get rid of all that, and we just see the keyframe here. So now we can see our flags and everything at the same time. All right, so let's go to right before the battery pack enters, and let's just bring that down. Boom, just bring that down all the way to 0. And if you want, you can select those and keyframe assist, easy ease. If you would want to, I don't know, it's up to you. Then I go through and do the same for the ground. I don't like that. I actually don't like that. So I'm gonna undo that. There we go. Let's just leave it as is. A linear interpolation. That's all we're going to go with. All right, so now we're going to move on to the battery pack entering. So let's turn on our batteries. So we have our battery pack turned on. And for the animation for this, we're going to use CC page turn again. This time we're going to set it to classic UI. And we're going to, we want it to come from this side, from the left side, and then go out to the right. All right, so let's set this up. Fold, we're going to use the fold direction this time, and we're going to bring that down just a little bit till it's just barely on an angle at all. -84 is what we're going with. And for the fold radius, we're going to bring that up again. We're going to bring that all the way up to about 150, maybe. Yeah, whatever. You just go by what you want it to look like. All right, light direction. I don't like this little... I don't like the highlights that this gives. I like the shadows. So we're gonna turn this till it's in shadow rather than seeing that stupid little highlight. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't make any sense because the shadows for the LEDs were coming from the opposite direction. Where's the light coming from? Where's your light source, bro? And you know what I say? I don't care. We're just doing it this way. All right? All right, so let's jump down to back page and let's set that to the newly discovered thing that we can do is just set that to none. And let's bring this out so we can select the background color of our battery pack. There we go. And let's bring up the back opacity all the way to 100%. All right, so let's move this all the way to the... Whoa, where'd you go, buddy? Move this all the way to the left till it's just off screen like we did with the LEDs. And again, there I was holding down shift while clicking and dragging. I do that a lot, never really mention it, but if you see me moving perfectly along one axis, either, left to right or up and down perfectly without wavering, I'm usually holding down shift for that. All right, so let's create a keyframe for our fold position. Hit U on the keyboard as per usual. And we're going to go till just before the lead wires come in, a few frames before. So let's bring this over until we've completed our fold or our animation here. There we go, something like that. I guess a good rule of thumb is make sure that this little doohickey is pretty much at the end of your graphic. So if we move it over, a little bit, that's fine. All right, so we created that keyframe. So what I want to do is select on the last keyframe again, do keyframe assistant, easy ease in, and open up our graph editor. and go back to speed because this particular thing does not allow us to use the value. Anyway, bring that in like that. Let's play that back real quick. Wires. Finally, I can bring that in sooner too. So let's select these keyframes and move them in on wires. Finally, I hook up, yeah. So it comes in before the black wires stop their animation, and that's fine. You can overlap animations like that too. So now let's do the lead wires. So let's turn them on. Let's actually close that up. Now let's turn on our lead wires. Now we're going to add another trim path to this. All right, trim paths. And for this one, we're actually going to leave it on simultaneously. And we're going to be animating the end this time. See, it's not always doing the same things over and over again. Sometimes we change it up ever so slightly. All right, let's bring this all the way down to 0. Click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe. Hit U on the keyboard to make it so that only the keyframe is visible. And let's go to LEDs light, that marker there. And let's bring this to 100. I'm going to do the same that I did with the battery pack and the LEDs. I'm going to select on the last one, easy ease in. All right, and can I do a value? Yes. All right, so I'm going to bring that over so we kind of...
wires from the battery pack to the very... I hook up the wires from the battery pack to the...
There we go. Maybe a little bit more. Let's make that extreme.
I hook up the wires from the battery pack to the very first pads.
All right. So now we have one last thing to animate. And you see our last animation beat is LEDs light. Now, how do we do that? Because we don't even have, our LEDs lit up layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our LEDs, we're going to duplicate them again. So that's Command D. And we're going to move that all the way to the top, but below our paper texture. So above our battery pack. So LEDs 3, let's get rid of our page turn. Let's open this up and let's open up the contents and let's select everything but the actual LED. If you click on the first one, hold down Shift and select to the pads and then hold down Command and select strip, you'll exclude the LED there. So we're going to get rid of everything except for that LED. Then we're going to go into our actual rectangle path. We're going to change the size a little bit. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. So taller and longer, just a little bit, not much. So what we're going to do on top of that is we're going to add a fast box blur. Okay, that's under blur and sharpen, fast box blur. We're going to add that onto our LEDs 3. And we're going to change this to LEDs lit. So we're going to take our blur radius. We're going to bring that up just a bunch, One thing we also want to do is take the color of our LEDs and let's brighten that up as well. So bring up the brightness, maybe turn down the saturation. So we get more of a slightly yellow white, I would say is a good description. So for this whole layer, we're going to set the blending mode from normal to add. So let's bring up our radius for our fast box blur. And let's also bring up the size of our thingy. There we go. So now we have a nice little glow on top of everything without having to do too much work and without having to create a whole new layer. We just take the work that we've already done and change it. All right, so another thing we want to do is hit T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity. And we're going to Alt click on the stopwatch so we bring up our expression editor. And I'm going to type in wiggle parentheses, okay, don't know why I didn't do it. And we're going to set up, basically it's a randomizer. There's going to be 2 numbers in this array. The first number is going to be the speed at which, or the frequency, it selects a new random number. And the second number is going to be like a range between the numbers that it can select. We're going to create basically a light flicker. Now, of course, in real life, if your circuit is flickering, it's not a good thing, but for the animation purposes, it is. So we're going to do 14. It's a very quick 14 times per second, basically. It's going to select a new number, and we'll do a value of, let's say 30 for now. See what that looks like. So what this is going to do basically is randomly select a number that is either 30 under the value that's already selected, that's hardwired into this, which is 100, or 30 above. Now, obviously you can't have more than 100% opacity, so it's just going to go from between 70 and 100. All right, so let's take a look at what this looks like.
Repack to the very first pads. It should be pretty simple.
There we go. That's fine. I think that's fine. Maybe set this to 20 rather than 30. Yeah, I don't think I want it to be too in your face. All right, so now what we can do is where it says LEDs light, our first keyframe is actually going to be as soon as these lead wires connect, or right when they stop their animation. So right about here is our first keyframe. So we're going to set the opacity to be 0. And we're going to go like maybe 3 or 4 frames, and we're going to set that to, as you can see, we're at 0, but it says 6. That's our wiggle. All right, so we're going to bring that all the way up to 100. So let's play that back from the lead wires coming in to it lighting up.
Hook up the wires from the battery pack to the very first pads.
All right, so you'll notice that we can still see, hold on, let's turn off the audio. If you play this back, you can see, we can still see the LEDs lighting up before they should. What we can do is right before our first keyframe here is we can hit Shift Command D. That will split the clip. Then we select all the parts that we don't want, or this whole part before it actually shows up. Just delete it. Get it out of here. All right, so that's the entire animation of this thing. That's how I did it. So as you can see throughout this process, nothing is really like mind-blowingly complex. It's done on purpose because I don't have a lot of free time to make these videos, especially when I make these motion graphics for some of my videos. So you want to come up with ways of putting out your best work without, I don't want to make it sound like you're trying to be lazy, but it kind of is. But doing it artistically so it still looks good, you know? I don't know. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.